This is TV9 News at Christmas with Bruce Allen, Edie Fawcett, and Liz Mathis.
Merry Christmas, everyone. I'm Bruce Allen.
I'm Liz Mathis.
And I'm Edie Fawcett. Welcome to TV9 News at Christmas.
We're about to look back at some of the most interesting, most moving, and most life-changing stories of 2001.
And what a year it's been. Tragedy and triumph weave in and out of most of the stories we selected for this newscast.
There are survival stories about Lindsay Thomas and Nicole Fall, and triumphant stories like the Applington-Parkersburg football team.
But tragedy has struck eastern Iowa and our nation, too. The 9/11 attacks, the flooding of the Mississippi, the tornadoes of Buchanan County, and our economic downturn are stories we have to tell as well.
Join us now as we take a stroll down memory lane. We believe these are the top stories of the year.
But we know that in many cases, these stories aren't over. Some of them will have lasting effects in 2002.
Iowa's public education system received a hard lesson in economics this year.
Schools, colleges, and universities are learning how to deal with a 4.3% state budget cut. Governor Tom Vilsack ordered the across-the-board budget cuts because of dwindling state revenue and a weakening economy. But he ordered them halfway through the school year, when part of the money's already gone. TV9's Renee Chu shows how schools are scrambling to do the same with less.
18, 19, 20. At Cedar Rapids schools, the effects of state budget cuts aren't something you can see by just stepping into the classroom, yet.
How did you do your test?
Teachers are still teaching, students are still learning, and the district is figuring out how to cut $2.75 million from its budget.
We did make a 1% cut in all of the non-salary budgets in our school district. That's not an awful lot because there's not much in non-salary in our district.
84% of the Cedar Rapids schools budget is in personnel. The district is encouraging as many as 100 employees to retire early. If someone does leave, it may not fill the vacancy. And the district says it will borrow from its cash reserves to get through the current school year. Linn-Mar schools are also trying to keep budget cuts out of the classroom. Trimming more than $690,000 from the budget means dealing with small losses in small areas.
We basically said we were going to fund the essentials that we need to provide our programming for our students, and then basically froze all other aspects of the budget.
That means no travel for the rest of the school year. If equipment breaks down, it may not get replaced. And again, if an employee leaves, the job may not be filled. The University of Iowa also says it will handle budget cuts through attrition. The U of I has to trim $22 million from its budget. The Board of Regents recently approved a tuition hike of 18.5% for U of I, UNI, and ISU, but that won't be enough.
Clearly, we're going to have to trim, we're going to have to slash some programs and services. We're not going to be able to do everything that we've been able to do.
How can we apply those to broader society?
Kirkwood Community College hopes to do everything it's been able to do, but with newer, younger, part-time staff. The college made early retirement offers to offset a $670,000 loss from state aid.
And at the end of this month, we will have 46 of our senior faculty members, administrators, support staff leave this college. We're going to lose nearly 1,100 years of experience.
Students wanting to experience Kirkwood will have to pay $8 more a credit hour next year to get it. It marks the community college's single largest tuition increase. Kirkwood hopes to avoid layoffs or program cuts, but down the road, it will be tough.
We're preparing ourselves for the potential for additional budget cuts as we go into FY 2003.
Eastern Iowa's K-12 districts don't see it getting any better for them.
Anytime you have to cut people, you're also going to cut services. So for us to pretend that it's not going to have a negative impact on the school district would be to deceive ourselves. It will have a negative impact.
That means next school year, you may be able to see how budget reductions are cutting into education right in the classroom. Renee Chu, KCRG-TV9 News.
2001 also brought about landmark legislation that boosted teacher salaries and overhauled the way they're paid. This teacher compensation law also pairs beginning teachers with a veteran teacher as a mentor. But with little growth in state revenue, lawmakers are wondering how they'll pay for the 5-year, $300 million plan. They did make a $40 million down payment this year.
It's not just schools, but also new pools that made the news in Cedar Rapids this year. Last summer, voters approved a local option sales tax to raise $15 million to replace or refurbish 6 public pools. Work also began on a $15 million new ballpark. TV9's Dave Fransman says when you total it all up, 2001 will go down as a big year for sports and recreation.
Usually it's hard to get excited about outdoor swimming pools in the middle of winter, but this might be the year to think swimming in Cedar Rapids. Work will keep going throughout the winter on 2 new pools. The first at Beaver Park should be ready at the start of swimming season next year. The new pool at Knoll Ridge Park will probably open a month after that. The city will do 2 pool projects a year for the next 3 years.
Once the local option sales tax was passed, we hit the ground running, because we had to get the demolition and everything going right away so that we could get this far along, because we didn't want to lose a season at either of the pools. And so staff devoted a lot of their time, a lot of their personal time to make sure that this happened.
The official work on the pool projects in Cedar Rapids began in September with the ceremonial scoop of a shovel. But the job of making it all happen started many months before that. Pool supporters had to convince voters that 40-plus-year-old leaking pools called for drastic measures. A committee of volunteers looked at options and drew up a plan. The idea of a 1-year, 1-cent local option sales tax with the theme of a penny for the pools struck a chord with voters.
The 3 reasons I voted yes are my son Matthew, my daughter Victoria, and my daughter Caitlin, so that they all have a place to swim safely.
Well, the money for the pools came at the end of a remarkable year of campaigning for taxpayer financing. For instance, last July it was the 1-cent local option tax to pay for the new and rebuilt pools in Cedar Rapids. In December of 2000, voters also said yes to $46 million in school bonds, not only to repair existing Cedar Rapids school buildings, but also to build one new one. But the string of successes really started here. That's in August of 2000 when voters approved a levy increase to spend $5 million over a period of 4 years to help pay for a new baseball park. The $15 million new stadium project needed more than just an increased tax levy to become a concrete reality. Volunteers like Bill Quinby and Sarah Else are still chasing the final donor dollars needed to complete the project.
Well, we definitely can see the end. It may take a few more months.
Workers had barely begun construction when they ran into a snag of sorts, a spring of underground water. That added some extra time and expense to the work. But the budget news otherwise was all good news. Every major part of the stadium that went out for bids came back under estimates. More importantly, though, the new ballpark seemed to break the ice and convince supporters of other civic projects that the city voters were ready to say yes.
We had a little bit of a negative spell there. Negativism was going on for 5 or 6 years. Nobody wanted to spend any money. Nobody wanted taxes. Well, when you have something good, you have to spend a little money.
And I think by keeping it on that positive fashion and supporting each other instead of creating negative, oh, if we win, they need to lose, or that, it didn't happen. I mean, we worked with the pools, we worked with the schools and pools worked with us.
At age 53, the old Veterans Memorial Stadium fell to the wrecking ball in October. But it was hardly a time for tears. When New Year rolls around, a new ballpark and new pools should have sports fans and swimmers anxiously awaiting something. Dave Fransman, KCRG-TV9 News at Christmas.
Ballpark supporters promised to raise $1.5 million in donations as their share of the funding. They hit the $1 million mark in early November. Now they're just a little over $350,000 short of their goal. The new ballpark should open in April.
Definitely something to look forward to.
And there are many other 2001 events which are going to reach into 2002 as well. And when we come back, a miraculous survival story. Lindsay Thomas is alive and walking.
Courage, strength, and perseverance. Those are just a few of the words you could use to describe Lindsay Thomas. You'll remember Thomas spent 5 days trapped in her wrecked car after falling asleep at the wheel. Doctors had to amputate both her legs below the knees. Well, now Thomas uses prosthetic legs to walk. Lindsay Thomas shared her amazing survival story with TV9's Angie Hunt.
It was April 30th. 2 DOT workers found Lindsay Thomas alive inside her wrecked car. It was 5 days after the West Union teen was to arrive at her parents' home. It was a time that for Lindsay Thomas seems so long ago.
The time seemed so slow when I was in the hospital and couldn't, make things go faster for myself. But now even though it's only been, 6 months, it seems like it's been years. So I don't really know what to say, if I feel like the progress has come how I want it to, or that it's gone fast. But I'm just glad things are pretty much back to normal.
Lindsay is back at home for the holidays. Although she hopes to spend some time relaxing, she also made a visit to U of I hospitals.
There's so many wonderful people here at the hospital, so it's just kind of fun to be able to talk to them about the future and about what's going on now, instead of a whole bunch of serious things.
Lindsay had a chance to visit with hospital staff, but also had several appointments scheduled.
It's just going to be kind of follow-ups, and then as far as dentistry-wise, we're working on trying to decide what to do next with my teeth. But I'm looking to do permanent implants, but it's going to be a long process of different surgeries and waiting periods and stuff like that.
Lindsay's also making plans for a new set of legs. She was fitted for her first set of prosthetic legs back in July. But Lindsay says she's looking for something to give her more flexibility.
I'm looking forward to having the opportunity to cycle again. It's something that's, with the prosthetics I have right now, I don't have a lot of movement to cycle, but I do have the strength to do it because I'm always running around and everything. So it'll probably be another month or so.
Lindsay's amazing story has attracted national attention. Even living in Seattle, thousands of miles from home, she's recognized.
Some people approach me, or I'll overhear conversations, "Isn't that girl?" But I typically don't say anything because that always starts a conversation that might not end for a long time. So, but I do know that a lot of people recognize me, though.
After the holidays, Lindsay will be returning to Seattle to start school.
I'm going to try to do a double major, and the first major being prosthetic and orthotics, and the second being in business management. And I hope to complete it in 5 years.
Lindsay's accident and recovery has brought her family even closer to each other than before. Her father, Dean, says it's amazing to see Lindsay off and on her own again.
I think we both wish that we could take credit for her, but that's Lindsay, and we're just very proud to say that's our daughter.
But Lindsay is quick to add that it's the support of her family that's helped with her recovery. Angie Hunt, KCRG-TV9 News.
Lindsay Thomas recently met with her doctors at University of Iowa hospitals and clinics. She also celebrated her 19th birthday while home for the holidays. The raging rivers of eastern Iowa made the headlines this spring.
They certainly did. TV9's Captain Bobby Ratliff watched the mighty Mississippi swell beyond its banks from the air. Newscopter 9 gave us a better perspective of how flooding can affect a river town.
Rain and snow is something that everyone depends on for things like transportation, recreation, and agriculture, but every so often we get too much.
Sometimes it's a snowstorm or a flash flood. This year, it was an unstoppable Mississippi River flood. When the Mississippi floods, we get plenty of warning because it takes time for those countless creeks and rivers to push the big river above flood stage. But once it hits, it's hard to fight and slow to go away. The newscopter starts covering the flood at Prairie du Chien, Marquette, and McGregor. It was bad there, but the flood levels were getting worse further downstream as the days went by. Now at Able Island near Guttenberg, residents here enjoy living near the river, but the risk of flooding is clearly very high. On this island, it's too difficult to sandbag that level of water. Now Dubuque was better off. They have a flood wall, but this did not help the residents of East Dubuque. This Illinois town has adapted to persistent flooding, and they've even learned to commute to work by boat. Now further down the Mississippi in Comanche, people really fought the river. Massive individual efforts to save their personal property. The amount of sandbags you see on the ground shows you the tremendous water pressure that the Mississippi exerts on their defenses. And finally in Davenport, the flood builds even higher, setting records and becoming a national news story. Now, Davenport does not have a permanent flood wall, so when it floods, they have to build one. And that takes a massive volunteer effort, along with the National Guard, that helped hold the river as much as possible. Now, the newscopter's aerial coverage shows how the Mississippi took over large parts of the city. They tried to build a dike around the baseball stadium, but that effort failed. Now, that loss is understandable because from this angle, you can see the depth and width of the flood at its peak. It's covered downtown signs. Only the light poles and traffic signals can be seen above the muddy water.
Floods aren't fast and violent like severe weather. They're slow, methodical, and widespread. Expensive to prevent and expensive to clean up. Bobby Ratliff, KCRG-TV9 News.
The Mississippi River remained above flood stage for nearly 40 days, causing about $7 million damage, according to the Federal Emergency Management Agency.
We've also had our share of severe weather this year. 11 confirmed tornadoes touched down in Buchanan County. The volunteer storm spotters can proudly state the facts about all of this. 11 tornadoes, only 4 injuries, and not 1 death. For that reason, TV9's meteorologist Scott Lind reports some tornado victims believe storm spotters are heroes.
On April 23rd, a weak tornado touched down about 200 yards from the Independence School complex, leaving holes in this row of trees and destroying a garage near the football field. Students in the nearby school took cover after the tornado was spotted by a teacher. Dispatchers, emergency management, and trained spotters jumped to action.
All stations from KCRG-900, we have had a report of a tornado that touched down on the east side of Independence. Repeating, we have had a report of a tornado that has touched down on the east side of Independence.
Go ahead, John. Look to the northeast. It looks like there's a rotation just above the tree line. See it? I'm looking right now. I can't see anything at the moment. Yes, I do. It's on the ground. 441 from 42. Go ahead. I can see some ground clutter northeast. I can see ground clutter far northeast of Independence.
That's the voice of Charlie McCardle. When there's a threat of severe weather in Buchanan County, Charlie heads to the empty 5th floor of the Mental Health Institute in Independence. From here, he can see for miles in all directions. And this year, he got an eyeful.
Prior to this year, I've been storm watching for about 10 years. I've never seen a tornado. This year, we were actually able to see at least 5 or 6 tornadoes from this vantage point.
Charlie spent a long time in the tower on June 1st. This home video captured by Kelly Murley shows one of several tornadoes that day. At 4:05 p.m., the video shows the tornado's debris cloud ballooning. That's Chuck and Lois Tempest's farm being blown away. Their son Troy was on the farm when the tornado hit.
I went in the house, turned on TV, and turned on the scanner, and I heard him start talking about a tornado north of Winthrop and east of the Bethel Road, so then I knew, well, it was pretty close to me.
Jason Schneider was one of the spotters he heard on the scanner.
We were about a quarter mile up the road. Close enough. Probably too close.
Jason's report and seeing the tornado with his own eyes was enough to make Troy move to the basement. Just about everything on the Tempest farm was destroyed. New machine and cattle sheds have replaced the scraps of metal and equipment the tornado left behind. The house where Troy took cover had only minor damage. This holiday season, Troy's dad, Chuck, can look back with some hindsight.
That day when you see it, you'll say you'll never come out of it, but I thought the same thing, but I think we are really better off now than what we were before. And as long as everybody's healthy and didn't get hurt, that's the main thing.
Tornado season refused to end quietly. This house near Aurora was damaged by a tornado on September 6th. Again, storm spotters left their families to protect their friends and neighbors.
You always wonder, is the family safe?
Rick Wolfkuhl is emergency manager in Buchanan County. He works closely with the volunteer spotters. He says they make big sacrifices to serve their communities.
But these guys put themselves out there in harm's way a lot of times for us, just to protect Buchanan County and give us those early warnings to get people protected. So they're heroes.
And next spring, when the first signs of severe weather surface, these dedicated spotters will be at work again.
It goes back to the old adage, whether it's emergency management, it's the fire service. Protect people, protect their property.
That was Scott Lind reporting. The final bill isn't in yet, but the damage estimates for the year's 11 tornadoes will be over $2 million. Now, after spotting 11 tornado touchdowns in 2001, you might think Buchanan County spotters have plenty of training for next year. But even with those experiences, more than 60 volunteers will sit down for a day of spotter training coming up in March. This year was filled with many stories that tug at the heartstrings. Remember the high school athlete who survived bacterial meningitis? And how about the Dubuque nuns who are serving jail time? We'll update their stories after this.
It's going to be a special Christmas for Nicole Fall and her family. The former Cedar Rapids Jefferson softball player survived a life and death battle this past summer. TV9's John Campbell updates the story that first hit the airwaves in late May.
She's been a varsity kid for 4 years, and she was in the all-tournament last year at the state tournament. Excellent hitter. Good softball player, enjoyed softball.
When I first played softball, I was like, I didn't know too much about it. I was like, oh, you know. But then as soon as I started going, I was like, wow, this is like my life. You know, I really enjoy this, and Miss Niemeyer made it fun.
Doctors at Mercy Care South in Cedar Rapids suspect a local high school student may have bacterial meningitis.
The Gazette reports Nicole Fall was hospitalized Thursday with a bad headache and high fever.
I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning and I was like, Mom, something's wrong with me. And she's like, hey, we'll go to the hospital.
That night was really scary because we got to the trauma center and she was saying that she was in a lot of pain, crying, you know, Mom, help me, help me.
My head was just spinning, it was pounding. And
within half an hour she went unconscious. And the last thing she said to me was, Mom, I can't hear you. And then she went unconscious, and that was really scary.
For 4.5 days, Nicole Fall lay unconscious.
Did our kids a lot, and I mean, it affected them softball-wise, but I think the priority was they all liked Nicole, and they were worried about Nicole.
After we had that meeting in Miss Niemeyer's office, we realized that, you know, you can die from this, so we were all praying that nothing was going to happen to her and that she was going to be okay.
A Cedar Rapids Jefferson High School graduate with bacterial meningitis is improving.
18-year-old Nicole Fall is now in fair condition at Mercy Medical Center after being in serious condition yesterday.
After 9 days in the hospital, Nicole Fall went home, 20 pounds lighter, weak, and suffering from double vision. It was mid-July before her vision returned to normal.
Yeah.
Mr. Niemeyer had asked her to come and take pictures with them, and so she went down there, and once she was down there, I think that's what kind of got her. She said, I think my eyes are pretty good. Maybe I should try hitting.
And she said, well, Mom and Dad really want me to play. And I said, well, what does the doctor say? Well, it's up to me, how I feel. I said, well, you go home, talk with your Mom and Dad. I said, that's their call.
Good morning. Our top story, a Cedar Rapids teenager hospitalized for 9 days with a potentially life-threatening illness, is now back on the softball diamond.
It helped us a lot. It boosted our morale a lot and our intensity and our enthusiasm and everything, so it was great.
And then when I was my first at bat, I was a nervous wreck. You know, I didn't know what to do. I was like, okay, I got to concentrate on this, concentrate on that, and I was just like, and I struck out. Go figure, you know.
Nicole got 2 hits that night and afterwards reflected on her return to the team.
That was my goal. My main goal was to make it back. And it's been an experience I don't ever want to go through again. The whole sickness part was terrible, but, you know, it's something I had to deal with. And then coming back and playing softball and having so much support from my teammates, it's tremendous. I love it.
I think the fact that she is athletic, I think that she's in good condition other than what she got, I think really helped her. I think the fact that she was young helped her get over that.
My mom and my dad have been really supportive of me, and they were always like, you know, this happened to you, you got to take it slow. You can't just jump right in. And so, but I don't like to just take it slow. I like to jump right in.
In August, Nicole Fall had the graduation party she did not have in June. She is now a student at Kirkwood, holds down a part-time job, and yes, she's playing on the Kirkwood softball team. And Christmas? That's going to be a special day for Nicole Fall and her family. The entire clan is gathering in Minnesota to celebrate.
It's going to be it's going to feel so great to see them and just thank them for being there and for their prayers and everything. I'm just blessed that I'm here. At least I could have one more Christmas.
Nicole Fall says she is 99% back to normal. Doctors tell her there is very little chance that she'll ever have a recurrence of the disease. Dubuque nuns Dorothy and Gwen Hennessy made national headlines this summer when they entered federal prison. The 88 and 68-year-old siblings were convicted of trespassing onto government property at the School of the Americas in Fort Benning, Georgia. They were part of an organized protest.
Well, the U.S. government says the International Military Academy trains Democratic police forces. Others, like the Hennessy's, say it's a training ground for state-sponsored killing in Central and South America. The nuns' prison terms are almost up now. Gwen will be leaving the Pekin, Illinois prison camp on January 14th. TV9's David Scott caught up with 88-year-old Dorothy Hennessy, who's already back in Dubuque. She's spending a Christmas Eve without her sister and partner in civil disobedience.
If the holidays are a time to look back and reflect, Dorothy and Gwen Hennessy have some unique things to think about. On July 17th, the nuns became federal prisoners, guilty of an illegal protest at the School of the Americas, an international military academy in Georgia. They were sentenced to 6 months.
This seems to have been the will of God for me, that's all.
Are you pleased with what seems to be God's plan, the way it's going so far?
Well, somebody needs to do this. I can see that. And I don't know why I got picked, but...
For health reasons, Dorothy was transferred back to Dubuque. She sleeps at the Elm Street residential facility, but spends days at her home convent. At 88 years old, she may have garnered more attention for her cause than anyone else could have. Look at the letters she's received. Look at the media that covered the 9 protesters when they entered prison. The attention hasn't changed the Hennessy's, though.
Oh, it can't faze me very much because I know the truth. And the truth is, Gwen calls these her beatifications. like you know, they make you feel like they think you're a saint, which of course I'm not, and I know better.
The Hennessy's have refused to make themselves the story in all that's happened over the past year.
All these drawers are full of mail.
They want to focus solely on the School of the Americas.
If you want to write, and so many have written, write to your congressman and ask him to close down that SOA that's been doing so much harm.
The SOA, or School of the Americas, has actually now been renamed. Dorothy says its purpose is the same, though, and she might protest it again. Prison hasn't changed that.
No, I haven't changed my mind. So, they call prison treatment, but I don't think it's changed my mind. I don't think it has Gwen's either.
Wherever they may be right now, in many ways this Christmas isn't so different for Dorothy and Gwen Hennessy than years past. David Scott, KCRG-TV9 News, Nightcast.
The School of the Americas is now called the Western Hemisphere Institute for Security Cooperation. It's still at Fort Benning, Georgia. The sisters at Dubuque's Mount St. Francis are planning a belated Christmas celebration for Gwen and Dorothy when the Hennessy's prison terms expire in mid-January.
The event that will put 2001 in the history books is clear. The terrorist attacks on September 11th. We will not soon forget. We'll take a look at how the 9/11 attacks affected eastern Iowa when we come back. Our country has stood for 225 years. In that time, just a few single-day events have changed the course of America's history. September 11th was one of them. Iowans watched in horror as terrorists tried to pull the red, white, and blue apart at the seams. TV9's Craig Brown shows us 4 very different perspectives on the life-changing event.
If you live to be 100, few days in your life will stick out like September 11th, 2001. It's been compared to the attack on Pearl Harbor, and on September 11th, that was on the mind of Joanna King.
Brought to mind my husband, who is deceased now, but he was in World War II, and he was in on the invasion of France, and that was supposed to be the war that was going to clear up all this trouble. There wasn't going to be any more trouble in the world after that.
Just a week before the attacks, Cedar Rapids, Washington sophomore Christina Ottomeyer was in New York celebrating her Sweet 16 birthday.
It was very tough because I was in Spanish class, we were taking a test, and one of the boys in my class came in and just said, you know, the 2 planes crashed into the Trade Center.
Retired Army Ranger Mike Warden was at work.
We're all architects and structural engineers, and so from that standpoint, for us to see a plane fly into it, it was, you know, it seemed like a joke. And then a little later in the news, I heard that another plane had flown into it. And then I knew that it was not a joke at all, and that something really catastrophic had happened.
And I was shocked, and I felt that what's going on exactly, it's like Middle East or somewhere not the United States.
Right now, you can probably remember exactly where you were when you got the news about September 11th. I was standing right on this spot watching these monitors as it happened. It's a day that all of us in the TV9 newsroom will undoubtedly remember for the rest of our lives.
After the attacks, many Iowans adopted a new central feeling. We are all citizens of the U.S., and what you do to one of us, you do to all of us.
If you look around town, there's an American flag right over there. Probably wouldn't have been there 3 months ago.
Islamic Center Imam Ahmed El-Heldi said his role for Muslims changed dramatically before and after the attacks.
I visited only 2 churches to give speech about Islam, and after September 11th till today, I visited over 100 churches.
The 11th also provided us with new challenges.
I find myself stereotyping sometimes, and I don't really usually do that.
Just 16 years old, Ottomeyer said it made her think about her own mortality.
I want to drive more carefully, afraid of my own death.
I have 5 grandsons, all of whom would be of the age of if ever they started the draft again, and it makes me fearful for them.
It was a call for everybody to not just to look at his family, but to slow down.
September 11th was a day that opened Iowa's heart, and an event we're still healing from 3 months later. In Cedar Rapids, Craig Brown, KCRG-TV9 News, Nightcast.
The attack on America's innocence also brought out the best of Iowans. Nonprofit organizations and charities continue to bring in millions for the victims' families, New York firefighters, and others in need.
The September 11th attacks have had a colossal effect on the nation's economy.
The country's economic health was beginning to weaken even before this fall. And by November, many economists finally uttered the R word, recession. We take a look back at this shaky year and where we might be heading in 2002.
And then on January 3rd, which wasn't a scheduled meeting, they came out and dropped interest rates by 0.5 point, which took everybody by surprise. So I think right there we knew, this is a dramatic indication of what the year is going to be like.
Co-college economics professor Rick Eichhorn followed 2001 with interest. That drop he's talking about in January helped the local home sales market.
If the interest rates stay lower, we can hopefully afford a house at a little more expensive a house, possibly with the rates that price right now.
But there were shades of warning. Bankruptcy courts were dealing with credit card debt associated with layoffs, high utility costs, and hard times.
If you're right at the edge, that may be what it is that pushes you over. If you lose your job and can't find a job for a month and you find it, but you've got that 1 month gap of very little income, that could create a problem for you.
Maytag had already sliced 100 jobs. Amana furloughed 350. Motorola in Mount Pleasant, Mattel Interactive in Hiawatha, and Hawkeye Rubber in Cedar Rapids all had worker cuts. Then spring emerged, and so did new economic indicators.
I think we started to see it getting worse because we saw industrial production continue to fall. And then we started seeing consumer confidence and related measures like that beginning to really take a downward turn.
Agri giant John Deere had predicted a 5% sales increase for their second quarter, ending April 30th. But sales turned sour. The company shut down for a week to slow production. A ripple effect started to show in the stock market.
The fear of the market right now is that that will slow down the economy, hurt corporate earnings, and then cause stocks to go down a little even more.
One of Cedar Rapids' major employers, McLeod USA, began to get some bruises. It reduced its workforce, cut its budget, reevaluated construction, and halted expansion of its cable services. This was in May, and in October, even more was done to shore up business.
Customers aren't taking as much data services as we expected them to, and we believe that's because they may be making decisions to slow down some of their capital spending as well.
The Fed cut rates a few more times. It would be 11 total by the end of the year. The promised tax rebates came in August, but then the September 11th disaster at the World Trade Centers threw the macroeconomic model to the wind.
And it came at a particularly bad time because the economy was fragile.
The stock market closed after this, and when it reopened on September 17th, the Dow saw its largest one-day point drop ever.
And so there's some uncertainty, and investors don't like uncertainty.
Congress approved a $490 billion recovery and defense spending bill, hoping to stimulate the economy. On September 25th, Cedar Rapids' largest employer, Rockwell Collins, announced it would cut 2,600 jobs, a result of a drop in airline contracts.
Now everybody's going to be wondering for the next 6 months, when am I going to be let go? Should I look for other opportunities? Should I take other opportunities?
The country went to war in Afghanistan on October 7th, and the uncertainty continued to grow throughout November and December. But as the year winds down, there are some positive indicators that, despite economists' view, we're in a recession.
For every negative impact, we have a positive impact that's followed shortly thereafter, saying, well, yeah, unemployment's rising, but consumer incomes are going up.
And there's more news that the job market is stabilizing. The total number of workers filing for first-time jobless benefits has dropped. Well, one of the biggest stories in eastern Iowa politics this year was the Cedar Rapids city election.
Former Secretary of State Paul Pate defeated three-term Mayor Lee Clancy, and former TV broadcaster Wade Wagner beat two-term Parks Commissioner Dale Todd, and both wins were by big margins. The results came in quickly and dramatically the night of November 6th. Paul Pate celebrated a huge victory, while incumbent Mayor Lee Clancy put up a strong front as she consoled her supporters. It was a hard-fought and sometimes bitter campaign, marked with the candidates squaring off with strong attack ads and going after each other face-to-face in forum after forum after forum. Now, 7 weeks later, each has an explanation for what happened.
The citizens of the city knew that we were in a different time. The economy was slowing down. There was concern about how we're going to pay for things that we have already committed to. There was concern about possibly where the city is going to go in the future. And I think that really drove a lot of the issues.
People made decisions in the election based on decisions that I made 3 and 4 and 5 years ago. And when you're in office at the local level for any period of time and you want to get things done and you're making things happen, you're going to make people unhappy along the way.
Many people were unhappy with Clancy, and often that unhappiness turned into personal attacks, something Clancy doesn't understand and something Pate hopes to avoid.
It may have been that I'm perceived as being aloof and unapproachable, which has always been a puzzlement to me, because I don't consider myself to be that.
Yes, they could have a disagreement on the direction an elected leader is guiding the city, but it shouldn't be a personal level. It should really be about the decisions and the leadership style is a fair game, and I will be held to that same kind of level of expectation.
Election night brought another big change to the Cedar Rapids Parks Department. Challenger Wade Wagner watched as he built an insurmountable lead over incumbent Parks Commissioner Dale Todd. Wagner says during his campaign he could already sense people wanted a change.
When I was getting out meeting with the voters and the people, they just felt a sense of frustration and disillusionment that you couldn't really focus on and you couldn't really get a handle on, but it was out there, and I think it showed in the general election.
It showed with voters overwhelmingly turning away from Dale Todd. But Todd now believes some dynamics were at play that night that were beyond his control.
Different forces came together. And the reality is that, you know, every now and then there's going to be an election like mine where it's really not based on your accomplishments. It's based more on who you are and who you represent. And I think that's what my election was a lot about.
Now Wade Wagner is preparing to take over as Parks Commissioner, and he's already finding out what it's like to have groups and organizations making demands.
They all have their own agenda. Sometimes I feel like Santa Claus here at this time of year because everybody wants a little piece of the pie, some money, but they understand budgets are tight as well. So if they can get just a little piece of what they're asking for, I think they'll be happy.
And as Dale Todd leaves office, he's satisfied with what he's accomplished. New swimming pools are coming. The ice arena's here. Golf course improvements are underway, new trails, and 27 playgrounds.
Yeah, we did it. I had a great staff. No regrets. It's like I'm almost like Jordan, leaving at the top of my game, you know. And so, but I'm over the election and I'm just ready to move on.
So if you're like Jordan, that means you'll be back?
That's good, Bruce.
By the way, he didn't tell me if he will be back. But Dale Todd did say he wants to decompress a little bit and just find out what the next phase of his life will be. Now, Lee Clancy has spent most of her adult life in public service, either in a paid job or as a volunteer. She plans to take a couple of months now to decide what she'll do next. Paul Pate and Wade Wagner move into their new jobs on January 2nd.
Many memories have been made this year, some good, some bad. From successful athletes to devastating fires, the news of 2001 continues right after this.
Firefighters raced to the Pentecrest area on the University of Iowa campus on November 20th.
And when they arrived, they found flames shooting from the old Capitol's Gold Dome. They also found 2 university employees fighting the fire from the inside. TV9's Iowa City reporter Mike Wagner introduces us to these 2 men who kept the flames from spreading.
The flames were shooting way above the dome. It was a real inferno in the central core of the dome. I haven't seen flames that intense since I was a kid when I saw a lumberyard catch fire.
The lumber this fire destroyed included some of the old Capitol's original wood, beams more than 160 years old, timber so dry, a torch used to remove paint sparked the flames and they spread quickly. Mary New was inside and dialed 911 as smoke swallowed the scaffolding around the dome.
And then the flames started. Boy, it went fast, didn't it? It's still going.
We grabbed a hose from second floor and took it up there, and Joe was shutting the breakers down while I was spraying the water.
Tad Wiseman is the old Capitol's custodian. He was in the basement when the fire started.
I seen a little bit of smoke up there, and then I went inside, and from there, me and Tad went up.
Maintenance worker Joe Stockman met Tad on the old Capitol's spiral stairs. They spent about 15 minutes inside the dome trying to hold back the flames until firefighters arrived.
When we were hosing, there's another door that you go up to the bell, and that door was starting to glow. I think that's when we realized that, yeah, it was a lot worse than what we thought it was going to be.
The fire also drew crowds of people with cameras recording this historic fire on video. Lem Torvelius works in the U of I's communications building. He saw the flames, grabbed a video camera, and sprinted across the Pentecrest, shooting this video and beating firefighters to the scene.
We took a look at it, just 1 second, I got to take the shot. So I ran up there. My lens was dirty at the time, so you could see in the footage there was a lot of dust in there.
Andrew Hawkins didn't see the fire until someone told him about it. They were here in this lab at the Bowen Science Building on the other side of the Iowa River.
My first thought really was actually to call 911, and I did that. But then I remembered that we had a digital camera in the lab, and it was handy. I thought, well, you know, this is going to be a tragic event, but it's a historic event.
This is one of the several pictures Hawkins took with that camera. They didn't stay in it for long.
My wife works in town, and I tried to email a photo to her. And I emailed a couple of photos to friends that were at the university but have since moved on to other places.
The university is moving on as well. A temporary snow roof will protect the old Capitol from snow, ice, and rain. Workers will be back on the roof in the spring to start rebuilding. Parts of the project will be slow and expensive.
There's a lot of that wood that has to be really carved. The capitals that are on top of the columns, things like that. If you go over there and take a look at the shapes of some of those things, they're extremely detailed, and they have to be a lot of it carved by hand.
Firefighters say the blaze was accidental, but the U of I is still trying to learn if it was preventable. As the effort to rebuild speeds along, the U of I is still investigating a series of warning letters. Sent before the fire, they warn that workers are violating the rules and the potential for disaster exists. From the Iowa City newsroom, Mike Wagner, KCRG-TV9 News.
The firewall that stopped the flames was built in the dome during the 1920s. Designers added the 1-foot-thick concrete slab after several lightning storms sparked fires in tall buildings around the state.
The year 2001 involved a number of crimes we won't forget. The case is closed on some of them. 4 others, the people accused, have yet to be tried in court. One case still involves a missing person. TV9's Joe Coffey takes a look back.
In February, an infant's body was found in a snowy field in Chelsea. 17-year-old Nicole Plum is accused of giving birth to the child and killing her. The trial has been moved to Cerro Gordo County beginning January 28th. The body of 26-year-old Sally Malakis was found in an apartment storage closet March 9th. 27-year-old brother-in-law John Buenaventura was arrested for her murder. He confessed and then recanted. 36-year-old Jerry Cole is accused of shooting 2 people in Dubuque in April. His trial is pending. In June, 28-year-old Tyrone Gilbert's dead body was found on the porch of a southeast Cedar Rapids home. He had been shot. No one has been charged. 24-year-old carnival worker Clay Thomas is accused of strangling a Cresco mother and her daughter. They disappeared from their home in July. Their bodies were found in Kansas. The trial has been moved to Alameda County. No date has been set. You'll remember the Sioux City murders in August. Adam Moss pled guilty to killing Letitia Aguilar, her 5 children, and another man using a hammer and a knife. Moss was sentenced to 7 life sentences. Waterloo native Tracy Carson's body was found in Dunkerton in April. She disappeared from her 40th birthday party 6 months earlier. 22-year-old Benjamin O'Donnell is charged with first-degree murder. His trial is scheduled for February. Crystal Arensdorf of Dubuque disappeared July 4th. She is still missing. No arrests have been made. In May, State Trooper Corey Keeney was injured by 22-year-old Paul Draper, who is wanted for firing a gun during a domestic dispute. Driving a stolen car, he led officers on a 2-hour chase that ended at Matzo Park, where officers say he killed himself. In July, 39-year-old Matthew Hayek led police on a manhunt after robbing a bank in Newhall. Hayek called a family member who turned him in. He pled guilty but has not been sentenced. In November, 23-year-old Joseph Ward stole a semi-tractor and led police on a high-speed chase through Marion. He faces first-degree charges of theft and criminal mischief. And finally, you'll remember back in February when 37-year-old Robert Palmer stole a Hy-Vee van full of alcohol. An intoxicated Palmer led police on a slow-speed chase, even driving on 3 rims at one point, hitting 2 patrol cars and a guardrail. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Joe Coffey, KCRG-TV9 News, Nightcast.
You'll also remember the arrest of Yosef Hamemsa in Cedar Rapids. The FBI wanted him for document fraud. There had been questions about his possible links to the terrorist attacks, but no formal charges have been filed.
Changing now to sports news, fans in Applington-Parkersburg have had a lot to cheer about this fall. They rooted for AP grads Casey Wigman, Jared DeVries, and Brad Meester in the NFL on Sundays. On Saturdays, they watched another AP alum, Aaron Campman, who led the Hawkeyes to victory. And Friday nights, the hometown Falcons steamrolled their way to a state championship. TV9's Scott Sable introduces Applington-Parkersburg's pride and joy.
Well, I think there's a couple reasons that we've been successful, or Casey and Brad and I have had the success we've had. You know, the coaches are very committed at Applington-Parkersburg, and that helps out tremendously. Even getting you into college, they're a big help with that. And then the support you get from your family. I know all 3 of us have gotten a tremendous amount of support, and also throughout the community. People support you, you want to do well, and it just drives you to be better, I think.
One thing that's a big factor, I think, is great coaching, and Coach Thomas has done a tremendous job with that program and building it up, and he does a great job of teaching the every player, to give everything they've got and to reach their full potential. But not only that, I think a lot of the credit has to go to the community, because the community really supports all the athletics and everything that, all the stuff that the students participate in. And I think that helps motivate, an athlete to do their best.
Tremendous values within the family, great work ethic, and then like anything, once you have a player make it, if it be at a D1 school or the NFL, it sort of opens the door for other kids from a small town saying, hey, you know, I can dream that. You know, that could possibly be a reality for me.
Casey Wigman paved the way for DeVries and Meester, starring for the Iowa Hawkeyes before spending 5 seasons on the Chicago Bears offensive line and then signing a free agent contract with the Kansas City Chiefs.
Well, Casey, when he made it to Iowa, even I wanted to get to Iowa and play Iowa football, and that was just every boy's dream growing up in Iowa, was to play Iowa football. And then once we got there together and he got drafted, I said, man, that'd be kind of neat. We could play, you know, in the league together.
That was a big help for me. I mean, it was great to see Casey and Jared make it, and it just helped show to me that you know, it is possible from a small town that you know, if you get everything you got, that you can make it to the NFL.
And would you believe there will probably be a 4th player from Applington-Parkersburg playing in the NFL next year? Aaron Campman finished his brilliant Hawkeye career as a first-team All-Big Ten defensive end.
He gets other guys motivated, and he's one guy that's always that stable guy, which is, I think, a lot of respect towards him from the other players of the team.
It's just kind of the All-American story, if you will, and he's done a phenomenal job.
They say success breeds success, and Applington-Parkersburg won their 2nd Class 1A state championship this year with a 14-12 win over Ogden.
This is probably the greatest one of my moments in 30 years, without question. From where we came after we lost that opener to where we are now is just unbelievable.
And yes, coaching does have a lot to do with it. What a job Ed has done building a football factory in Applington-Parkersburg. Scott Sable, TV9 Sports.
And who knows, maybe this year's state championship team will produce yet another NFL football player from Applington-Parkersburg.
We hope you've enjoyed TV9 News at Christmas.
It's given us a chance to relive some of the most important news stories of 2001.
But it's also given us a chance to reflect on a tumultuous year, and we hope you've done the same.
Now it's time to gear up for 2002. We plan to take what we've learned from this year and use it to make next year even better.
Season's greetings and Merry Christmas to all of you.
Thank you for watching us now and throughout the year.
We leave you now with a look at the Season of Lights. Squaw Creek Park in Marion hosts the more than 50 holiday light displays.
Proceeds will go to the Make-A-Wish Foundation and Hillcrest Family Services. You can tour the Season of Lights every night through December 31st. Happy holidays from all of us here at TV9.